Hello and welcome back to the NBA DFS Slate Breakdown for the second day of the season. We got a big 12-game slate. I've ran some lineups already, and I'm actually getting pretty contrarian with some of my lineups. So we're going to talk about that on today's slate, going through the 12-gamer. But before we do, come join us at Line Star. It is only $39.99 a month. Gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the DFS for all the sports we cover. Now, let's get into some of the fun on this slate itself. It's a very interesting one. Let's start off by point guard, some of the highest owned. Before we really get into it, I want to let you know that I am big time on this Washington and Pacers game. I think that's a very interesting one. Atlanta, Charlotte, I do like. I'm going to have a little, not going overboard. And then Sacramento, Utah, Dallas, Spurs, and Portland Clippers, I have a lot of. Those are the main games that I am kind of focusing on. But definitely getting some guys in most of the games, just obviously not in every lineup. All right, so high owned point guards, we got Tyus Jones, Luka Doncic, and Jeremy Sohan. So Tyus Jones on DraftKings, way too cheap of price. I like him. I do have a little bit of a worry that his ceiling isn't super high at this price. Now I will take him at 5K. I mean, 6X is very, very likely. So I do like him. I just don't know if, say, 8X is likely with him. I think he's going to be in a range between 5 to 7X, and that's where he likely just kind of sticks. And, so I do like him. Just don't love him. Not going to go overboard. I'm having a hard time getting to the pay-up options today. I do like Doncic, and he is one of my favorite pay-up options. So I will have a little bit. Not getting to much Sohan, but I do like him, and I'll probably be a little bit under the field, but I think he's in an interesting spot in a game that I really like to attack. I like to attack both sides of that game. I think it's very high scoring and has some real paths to really blowing up. Nah is too cheap. Now, pay attention to news. We have him as starter. He very well might not be. He might be the first guy off the bench. But it matters. So he is a solid fantasy point per minute guy, right around that 0.95 spot. And his minutes are going to vary big time today if he is a starter or not. Now, I like him either way because of his price. I don't love him. I just don't know if that real high ceiling is there. Now, if he gets over 24 minutes, you're probably going to need to have him because, you're talking about a guy that potentially could get 30 points and 10x's value and just crush the slate. So he's a guy to keep an eye on, wait as news comes out, and watch for that lineup to come out. Now it is a 4:30 game. I'm on the West Coast, so it is a 7:30 game for your East Coasters. So we may not have that lineup before lock. Just understand that's a spot that you may have to look at after lock. Marcus Smart, it's okay. He just doesn't have the ceiling. I do really like Tyrese Halliburton. He is one of my pay-up options that I will probably be getting to today quite a bit. Drew Holiday, I think, on DraftKings is very interesting. He is really cheap on DraftKings, and he does have the upside to go absolutely nuts on this slate, and he has that ability to put up 50 fantasy points. Now, this Boston team is a weird one this year, and it's very hard to project the usages for this team, so we really don't know how it all plays out. I mean, you got Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, and Holiday all on the same team, and there's going to be days where one of those stars is just totally invisible. while one star just goes absolutely nuts, and we're not going to know. So I think his ownership being low is for that reason, but he is interesting because at his price, there is a nice ceiling. Other low-owned guys that I like, I think Tyler Hero is interesting. I do slightly worry about how many minutes he's going to play, but he does likely start, and we do know he has a real high ceiling when he gets it going. And I think there is a chance that this team wants to get him going with everything that was going on with him over the offseason, with being involved in trade talks and said he's going to X team, and then, Portland doesn't want him and all of that stuff. So I think there might be a little bit of a chip on his shoulder this year, and I like that. Ben Simmons. I'm getting into a lot of Ben Simmons, and it scares the heck out of me. But this is a guy that can put up a ton of different stats. I do have some worries how he will be used, how many minutes he's going to be used, but he's looked good in the preseason, and I'm going to be watching closely on the news for him. If I think he's getting 30-plus minutes, I'm probably going to be playing a lot of him because there is a good shot for him to get double or triple doubles and get all those bonuses from it. So I do like him. Westbrook, absolutely interesting at low owned. I like that game. It's a fast-paced game, and Westbrook was actually pretty good for them last year, and he is somebody that they need to be good. Now, his usage is going to be way lower than, the Westbrook of old, but he's still a fantasy point per minute plus player, and he's going to play a lot of minutes, so I like him. Scoot Henderson, the Rook, I'm going to be all up in that. I like Henderson. I think he's interesting. He got a ton of usage in preseason. I think that carries over, and they're likely to just let him run with it, see what he can do. They invested a lot in him, so might as well let him go. Jordan Poole, 8,100. I absolutely love Poole. I'm going to have a ton of him on both sites. And then De'Aaron Fox is another pay down option that I like. On FanDuel, point guard wise, Jordan Poole is a little higher owned. I'm still getting a ton of him. He's actually one of my highest point guard and shooting guards. I like Fred VanVleet. I do worry a little bit about this game environment. It might be a little bit slow, but I think it's an interesting one, and he's going to get all the usage he can handle. So it's interesting there. Talked about Halliburton already. I like him. Cade Cunningham, we did not talk about yet. I think he is really, really interesting. Very, very tough matchup. But this is a guy that, would produce at like a 1.2 fantasy point per minute basis. And while he, has had a ton of time off, we know he has talent. And then when he puts that together, it really comes through with some high ceilings. And at his price, I think it is interesting. I'm not going to go overboard with him being lower owned, but I do very much like him and will have him being used a little bit. I think Garland's pretty interesting as well. Now, shooting guard, Bane, THT, Levine, highest owned. I do like Bane, but I think he's going a little too over-owned. THT, I will use. This is another spot, though. We got to pay attention to news throughout the day and what the lineup is, because his role last year was fickle. He would start, would play 30 minutes, come off the bench and not play at all. So we really need to look at what happens here as far as the lineup to play him or not. But I do like him. He can produce in bunches and is in a game environment that we love. High alert score. All looks good for me there. Tyler Hero, we talked about. Pelicans, they do have Zion back, so I don't like them quite as much. And probably won't be going to them that much, just because I think that ceiling is a lot lower. Benedict Mathurin. This is a play that I'm going to have a lot of. I think he is very interesting in a game that I really like. And there's, the path to him playing 30-plus minutes, and the dude can get buckets. He can score very well. and I think he's underpriced, so I like him quite a bit. All of this, by the way, can, change throughout the day. We're not sure starting lineups. Injury news can always pop up in basketball, and we have to pay attention to all of that. But he is pretty interesting. Now let's get on to shooting guard for FanDuel. Pretty much the same. Nobody, really jumps off the page on the lower side that we haven't already talked about. Small forward has a lot of the same guys. Don't really like DeRozan. Denny, I really worry about how many minutes he's going to play with their new additions. I don't mind him, though. And they did commit to him, signing him to, a longer deal. So I think he gets his minutes. Marketing's interesting. I think Franz Wagner is pretty interesting. I do like him at his price. And then don't mind Edwards or George. I really do like Sadiq Bey, and I think I'm going to get to a lot of him. Dude looks like he worked out real hard in the offseason. His body looks way better, and I think that Atlanta is going to give him solid run, and he's in a spot that's going low owned in a really good game environment, and has the ability, when he's shooting well, to really put up some points, get some boards. So I like his outlook quite a bit. Scotty Barnes, he's off the injury report. I think he is very interesting. His role with this team is kind of up in the air a little bit, but I really, really like him as a player. He can play that point forward role and do a lot of different things, and he's in a good game environment. So I like taking some shots on him as well. And now let's get over to FanDuel. Robert Covington is a guy that we need to talk about here. Now, on FanDuel, he's small forward, power forward. I think he's just power forward on DraftKings, so we'll talk to him about him there. But we're not totally sure what the Clippers are going to do with their starting lineup. Covington is expected to be the starter, and I absolutely love him if he is. Now, his usage on offense isn't going to be very high, but he is still a guy that can do fantasy point per minute, can get boards, get steals, get blocks, can shoot the ball. He can do a lot of the things this team needs, and he's just too cheap. He easily can put up 30 fantasy points in a role player role. And at 4,100, I think that's very, very interesting. Paulo Banchero, I really like his outlook this season. I think he's improved. He looked really good in the preseason, and that Houston team is not that great, so he could definitely put up some points in bunches. And if you see, last year he did good off them. 44 points both times, which 75K, I'll take it. 7.5K. Zaire Williams, definitely getting to some of him. It's another situation, though, where we're really not 100% sure what's going to happen with him minutes-wise. But he is interesting. And Kyle Kuzma, I like. I think he's a nice low-owned spot. I think this Washington Pacers game just isn't getting the love that it really should be. So there's a lot of guys from that game that I like. Now, while I say that I like them, understand, don't put 4 of them in a lineup together. I would probably cap that at 3. And even that on a 12-game slate, I might stick to 2. But that game environment is a good one, and you can always get a guy from the other side as well to have 3 guys from that same game. And let's go over to power forward now. Obi Toppin. Got to bring up him, especially on DraftKings. 3K is just way too cheap. He is expected to start, and I mean, he can produce. So if he's a starter at 3K, you might have to just bite the bullet and play a ton of him. Evan Mobley, I really, really like. I'm going to get a lot of him today. Now, I do think the ownership is a little bit high in this game. He is likely to play center. Jarrett Allen is out. So I do like him, and I'm going to play a lot of him. I'm just not going to get too crazy with his ownership. In games where Jarrett Allen isn't there, he's averaging almost 0.1 fantasy points per minute more. So there is some solid upside at 6,300 with him, and should play, all the minutes he can handle in the first game. So I do like that. Jarrett Jackson, I do think is going a little over-owned. Don't mind it. We'll play some. Rocco, 3,300. I mean, you're gonna probably have to have some of him. I think he's really interesting. Wemby, 8,500. I think is pushing it a little bit with him on FanDuel or on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he is only 7,700, and I like him a lot more there. So I will be getting to some Wemby, not a ton, more so on FanDuel. Other spots that I like, if we go down here, Chet Holmgren. That's the one that I was looking for. I really like Chet as a low-owned piece today. He has Wemby-like upside, maybe doesn't block as many shots or get as many steals. He's not quite as long, but he is still extremely long and can do a lot with his 7'1" frame versus Wemby's 7'4" or 7'3". But I do like him quite a bit, and I think he is very interesting. Sadiq Bey obviously in play as well down here. On power forward, does it change much over here? I think Tillman is interesting. I'm going to have some of him. Him and Jaren Jackson, I like both of them. I will only play one of them in a lineup. I'm not going to play both of them in a lineup together. So just understand that. Bonchero, I do really like. Pascal could have a super high usage without Fred VanVleet on that team anymore. So I think the upside is there, but he just doesn't project that great. So I don't know how much of him I'm going to get to. And on FanDuel, Obi Toppin is much more expensive. Might get to a little bit of him over here, but not nearly as much. 5,100 is just a lot. I think his ceiling, isn't too much higher than, say, 6x. So not sure how much I'm going to get to him as a starter for the Pacers. Simmons, 6,200 on FanDuel is pretty enticing, and I probably will get to a little bit of him. Now let's get over to the old center position. All right, there are a ton of centers, and that's part of the reason why I'm not getting too much Jaren Jackson. I do like Mobley, gonna get to a lot of him, but not going overboard. Turner's in a really good game environment. I like him. Sengun, I love this kid, and I think he's in a really, really good spot. There's also, the chance, at times, Houston has kind of used him like a light Jokic. He can pass, he can do a lot of things. I think he is very interesting, and I will be getting to some of him for sure. Rocco, we talked about, like him, he's interesting. I just wouldn't put him in the center spot. There's a lot of centers that have real interesting value. Walker Kessler, low owned. I like. Mark Williams is getting no ownership. He plays 30 plus minutes, and it's almost a lock for a double and a couple blocks, which is over 30 fantasy points and extremely useful. So there's just a ton of different ways to go at center, and I don't think you need to stick to Top and Mobley Jackson there. Vucevic, I'm not getting too much of on FanDuel. However, 6,900 on DK is very interesting in a game where he's going to likely play a lot, and we know he has 50-point upside. And on the FanDuel side, not getting too much bonus. We'll have some Victor, have some Sengun. And Gafford is one that I think is pretty interesting here. I would have expected him to be a little bit higher owned. I think he is a fairly safe play, but I do worry about his ceiling. However, at the end of the year, he was really putting together some big games, and he does have that ability to go, close to 50 points. It's just extremely rare. Capella is one that I think is pretty interesting in a good game environment. On the other side of Mark Williams, Charlotte has been bad against centers, although they were a little bit better with Williams there. But I think there's a good chance for him to be able to double-double in this spot as well. I just do like Mark Williams a little bit better than Capella. Turner. This is a spot that Bam should be able to absolutely crush Detroit. He did a couple times last year. The one thing I worry is Miami might not really have to try that much, and that puts a little bit of a damper on it for me. DeAndre Ayton, Clippers haven't been great versus center. Ayton, look, he's the centerpiece of this team right now, and he should get all the usage and all the minutes he can play. I also don't think he fit well with that Suns team. I think in a new situation, he could really crush, and I'm very interested to see what he does tonight. I'm going to have a little, not going to go overboard because people aren't going there, and I don't have a true inclination on what his usage is going to be, but I do like him. Clippers gave it up to center a little bit, and he could definitely crush. He's had some big games versus them in the past. When he's pushing 40 at 7K, I am totally down to get there. So, all in all, I think it's a very, very interesting slate. There's a lot of different ways to go. We really need to pay attention to the news that comes out throughout the day. I'm going to try my best to be involved in chat today to give, takes here and there as any new news comes out. But it gets really hard when we get close to lock because I got a lot of stuff to do. But I will try my best to be involved. You guys all have a great night. Good luck. And I'll see you. Won't be back tomorrow because it's only a 2-game slate, but I will be back on Friday with the NBA show. Have a good one, guys. Good luck. Adios.